2, and 1. Good evening. This is the November 3rd edition of Detroit in Black and White presents Eric Brown. Well, it presents Reality Strikes featuring Eric Brown. And I have with me this evening ML Elrick. And what I'll be doing this evening is 2 segments of my show. There will be a live version that will air at 9 o'clock. There will be a version of this interview that will air beginning at 8:25 p.m. this evening. So when you see this airing, you can make the comments, but I will not be responding to them until 9 o'clock when the live version of my show runs. So it'll be running from 8:30 to 9:30, but the first portion will be a pre-recorded interview that I'm doing with ML Elrick, Pulitzer Prize winner over at the Detroit Free Press. And the reason why I want to talk to ML, and I've been knowing him and his wife for, I think, over 15 years now, maybe closer to 20, and have a lot of respect for both of them. And one of the things that has bothered me, ML, as well as some of the viewers, not just on my show, but the regular version of Detroit in Black and White with Adolph, Vanessa, Alan, and Jim Nardone, and the producer, Teresa, is the lack of what we see or what we feel, the lack of, I guess, the media participation in the primary election. Things just got a little bit more meatier this last week or so. So my question to you being a reporter for the Free Press, why has it been such a slow media season when you have an election of a possible new mayor, and it's like the media oftentimes is known as the eyes and ears and to provide information, but that does not seem to have happened this election season. Any particular reason for that?
Well, whenever I hear this complaint, and I sympathize, I think we should be doing more. But my first question to folks is, do you subscribe to the Free Press? Because we don't work for free. And this is a business that's been gutted by social media and by people who get their information from TikTok and other, what I'm going to call parasite sites, where they take our work and they give it to people for free and they don't give us anything in return for it. When I was in City Hall in the year 2000, we had 300 reporters at the Free Press. We had 2 people in City Hall, and we had an office right around the corner from the mayor's office. Today, we have about 100 reporters and photographers and editors, and our office is in the basement of City Hall. We're the only news organization that maintains a City Hall bureau. So, if you don't pay, we can't play. But having said that, I will tell you the Free Press reported that Mary Sheffield used her city franking privileges to send out mail after she started running for mayor to all parts of the city, which was a new practice. We reported that Sauntil Jenkins had been admonished by the ethics board. We reported that Solomon Kinlock had been convicted of assault for beating his first wife. And since then, we've reported that Mary Sheffield claimed she didn't take money from billionaires and corporate PACs, when in fact she does. We've reported that Mary Sheffield took free concert tickets, that she actually requested them from a business in the city in a possible violation of the city's ethics ordinance. We reported that Mary Sheffield has donors who are involved in the culture of corruption that most people wished had left with Kwame Kilpatrick. And most recently, we reported that Mary Sheffield had voted for contracts involving the CEO of a company with which she had a personal relationship. So even with our skeleton crew, we've done a lot of groundbreaking watchdog reporting here at the Free Press, and people are getting that for $1 a month. So if people want to complain, show me your dollar or go walking.
And with that being said, ML, because one of the things you just mentioned spoke to the issue of the concert tickets. And I just found it amazing the amount of support that she's getting with regards to that situation. And it is a violation. I read the charter. 2-106-.4. That is a blatant violation. And, people want to say, even you had the corporate counsel saying that she did not violate anything. And I beg to differ with him because, first of all, he's a supporter of hers and he has no say in the charter. He wasn't on the charter commission. He wasn't even on the revision commission. So I just find it interesting that based on who people like, they're willing to look the other way when the citizens themselves voted back in November 2011 for the passage of the charter. My background is in HR. That's like a policy and procedure manual. And if I were to have done an investigation in a similar situation of an employee, chances are they would have been fired. But people want to look the other way and act like it wasn't that bad of a deal. So if the people are willing to look the other way, don't you think that gives the politician more room to say, well, they don't care, I'm going to do what I want?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen that in Washington, too. We've seen that with President Trump. We see it throughout the country. We see it where conservative Christians say that if you don't follow the Bible's teachings, you should be run out of office. But then we see they support people who have had children out of wedlocks during affairs. And those folks, they vote for them again and again. We've seen a lot of hypocrisy, and we've seen a lot of the standards that used to get people wiped out. When Bill Clinton was running for president in 1992, the number one issue was character. We don't seem to care about character anymore. And maybe it's because Bill Clinton didn't measure up so good on the character part. But this is a national issue. If you don't like it, it's a national dilemma. But we're seeing it play out here in Detroit. And one of the things that I think is also a problem is that we haven't really had a robust campaign. We haven't had a formidable challenger for Mary Sheffield. She got 51% of the vote in the primary, which is almost unprecedented. And she's raised more than 4 times as much money as her opponent. That's a lopsided race. And if the opponent isn't more aggressive, in this case, Solomon Kinloch, who's really finally starting to get feisty, that candidate isn't getting called out. And if that candidate isn't getting called out, most people are just going to hear what they say and assume that it's true.
And we can't, one of the things that Solomon Kinloch being a pastor, I think that was probably part of his issue with regards to not being the attack dog. But, I've been around politics for a while. The candidate does not have to be the attack dog. You have surrogates to do that. And I do feel that he did not allow his surrogates to do what they should have been doing all along, because anybody that's been in politics more than 1 or 2 terms, there has to be something out there on them. And if it's not good for that politician, but I do find it interesting that, and you mentioned the situation you reported on Solomon Kinloch, and I do know that you all got a lot of flack as well as the media, broadcast media, for reporting on something that happened, 19 years ago, I think.
Yeah,
maybe
longer. I think it happened in
it was 19 or 29 years ago. Maybe 29 years ago. Yeah. And, the citizens are also part of the problem. Like right now, they are expecting a 23% turnout tomorrow. The weather, 61 degrees, sunny, light winds. You go back to the primary election, 19% turnout. What do you think the problem is with the low voter turnout? And it's not something new. The last 3 elections, Duggan has never won the mayoral seat with more than a 25.37% turnout. 4 years ago, he only won with an 18.9% turnout. What do you think the problem is with the low voter turnout? And I know candidates matter. That's one of my philosophy. Candidates matter.
Yeah, candidates are important. And one of the best ways to motivate voters is to excite them and to engage them. And I'm not sure that either one of these candidates have done that. I think everybody feels like they know Mary Sheffield because wherever you turn, there's a billboard. There's an ad that pops up on your social media. She's on TV. She's stuffing your mailbox along with some dark money committees that are supporting her in a pack with literature. So she's kind of everywhere. And of course, she's been on council for 12 years. Solomon Kinloch, although he has a large congregation at Triumph Church, hasn't had the money to really bombard you the way that Sheffield has, although he also has a dark money committee that spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to support him. Here's what I believe is the fundamental problem. Detroit is one of the most impoverished big cities in America. Detroit has a tremendously high illiteracy rate.
Right.
And I think what happens is if you're not engaged, if you don't feel like you have a stake in things, and if you're undereducated, you're not going to vote. And I think studies have shown that more middle class homeowners, people with degrees, tend to vote. So with whatever we do to try and get people to come out to vote, the biggest thing we can do is get people on a more firm financial footing. Get people a job, get them a high school diploma, get them a community college associate's degree or a 4-year degree. Get them into a trade, make them engaged in a union. Trying to get more people involved is crucial because when you ain't got nothing, you ain't got nothing to lose, and you feel like you got nothing to gain. So why waste your time? We need to rise all boats.
And you brought up 3 important things, ML: poverty, illiteracy, and just the state of the voters in general. And I mentioned those because you have a person that's been on city council for 12 years now. During the whole time that person's been on city council, and this speaks to the fact that people don't pay attention, other than seeing that person everywhere, billboards. And I know Mary Sheffield. And one of the things that I tell people, I vote based on the progress I see, good, bad, or indifferent. And personally, for me, I'll be the first to admit it. People know how I feel about this. If I lived in the city of Detroit, I look at the time that someone has been a politician serving the people and what have they really done. One of the things, and you went to Michigan State, I went to Eastern Michigan. Prior to that, I went to a school down in Alabama. I've taken leadership courses at the undergraduate and graduate level. One of the first things they tell you when you speaking to people, you talk about we and us. One of the things I noticed about Council President Sheffield, she talks a lot about I and me. That's not leadership to me. Because no one that has ascended to the level of president of city council, a mayor, senator, governor, you on your own. So you have to give credit to people that help you get there. And that's a red flag for me, in addition to the lack of progress that I've seen. Everybody that know me, I'm a literacy advocate. And you hit on the point when it comes to the illiteracy rate, not just the adult illiteracy rate, but the K through 12 illiteracy rate as well. And when I see someone that's talking about what they're going to do, and I don't see that they have done it, it should not have taken you to run for mayor to say this is what you're going to do. Why did you not do some of that stuff during the 12 years? And I think that's probably one of the reasons that the voters are disengaged as well. Part of it is hopelessness, but then again, a lot of it, people do not see a return on the investment of investing in that person that they elected. Even though 4 years ago, only 18.9% of the turn of the eligible voters turned out to vote. So there's a lot of issues that people just do not pay attention to. And another problem in Detroit, you just have a very uninformed voter base. Bright lights is what get people to vote. Who's popular, name recognition. Once you move beyond that, I think that will be one way to change the trajectory of better candidates, of which you touched on as well. That has a lot to do with it. I mean, Mayor Duggan, even though people can say he did or he didn't the last 3 elections, they can easily say that the competition just wasn't there. That's why people didn't go out and vote, because they knew he was going to win. But something has got to give. The voters have to be impressed by someone that inspires them. And I just haven't seen that inspiration from, the candidates, even city council.
Well, I've talked to very few voters who are excited about either candidate. So I do think there's a lack of charisma in the candidates, which is pretty curious to me, because Mary Sheffield comes from a prominent family, a family where her grandfather and her father are both very dynamic people. And of course, Solomon Kinlock is a pastor. And if you've ever been to church in Detroit, there are not very many uncharismatic pastors. He is one of the more soft-spoken pastors. But as I saw in his church on Sunday, when he gets his teeth into something, he'll hold a crowd, no question about it. But, I think there's also a level of complacency. I think people feel like things are going pretty well. This is not an election where folks are out for change. And I hear from voters when I ask them about their choices, they say they'd like to vote for Mayor Duggan again. So I think people are very comfortable letting Mike Duggan do all the heavy lifting. And I think one of the things that we've heard from almost everybody who ran for mayor is, I'm going to continue the work of Mike Duggan. Well, I think we're going to find out how much credit Mary Sheffield deserves for the work that's been done and how much credit Mike Duggan deserves for the work that's been done. And for those people saying, oh, we got to continue what Mike Duggan did, well, I think everybody running for mayor has acknowledged that they're going to have to continue what Mike Duggan did with less money.
Right. You read my mind, Bill.
We're not spending money we used to. So it's going to be tougher. You want to do more, but you're going to have less. Good luck.
You definitely read my mind because, one of the things that bothers me is there's this notion about how great things are going. But outside of the three towns, Down, Mid, and Cork, what is really going on in the rest of the city that's improvement? I mean, you just saw WDIV Channel 4 a few weeks ago. They presented the report on illiteracy, unemployment, medium household income, as well as poverty and crime. So exactly what's things at this point in time that some candidate had the ammunition to talk about it, but they didn't. Those are things you want to improve and say you're going to improve, but that just has not happened. That's why I find it so amazing that people are so behind just one candidate and not questioning what they really have done.
Well, I'll tell you, as somebody who lives in the city, over the last 12 years, the parks are amazing. They were terrible. I mean, you wouldn't let your dog run through those parks. Now you don't hesitate to bring your family. The streets, more streets have been paved, more sidewalks have been fixed. Some of the commercial corridors. I mean, Livernois is, a revelation. And as an East Sider, I can tell you East Warren is running hard to catch up and making some progress. There's more police on the street. Response times are better. And in terms of the feeling of being a Detroiter, property values are way up. Now that's tough for people who want to buy homes, but if you've been holding down your fort, waiting for things to get better, things have gotten better. And the demolitions that have happened, removing these rotting homes that people loot and then set fire to and force the good neighbors to leave because they don't want to sit next to an abandoned wreck. Most of those homes are down now, and some homes have been rehabbed and people moved into them. So if you want to play the Ronald Reagan game and ask, are you better off than you were 12 years ago in Detroit? You absolutely are. But the question is, what is going to be done to make things better? There is a feeling that a lot of the progress that's happened downtown has not extended to the neighborhoods. I think downtown is grown by leaps and bounds, and the neighborhoods are better, but not the same degree of improvement as we've seen downtown. But where does that money come from? There's going to be less money. And if Mayor Duggan, with all the federal money he had and all the increased revenue because incomes were up, because there've been more people paying taxes, that we're not going to see. So people like Mary Sheffield will talk about a new revenue stream to help cover some of that shortfall. We'll see, but I certainly the amount of money coming from Washington is going to be cut. The amount of money coming from Lansing may be cut. And now some things that we haven't had to worry about so much, like pension obligations and other things that we didn't have to pay because of the bankruptcy, starting any day now, we are now going to have to pay those things. Duggan has left a $500 million rainy day fund behind, so that'll help. But when the big bills come, that savings gets spent real fast.
And that's something that candidates were not talking about. Even a candidate that was on city council, Fred Durhal knows what's going on. I mean, APRA money will no longer be there. And when these so-called bills are due, what's going to happen then? Because the worst thing that can happen is you go back to the dark days, and no one really asks who's best suited to address that type of situation. I think for some reason or another, people think it would be business as usual. And that's part of the being uninformed or just not paying attention. But at some point, what was good does not stay good. Municipalities are what they are. And one of the greatest issues, people talk about education. Who should run? You know, you got a superintendent and elected board of the schools, but they have not really been doing a lot. And it's good to say what you're going to do. And I think Kinlock had a better plan with regards to putting in place an educational czar. Mary talked about some of the things between the two of them are similar, but you can't talk about bringing business here. And we all know a lot of businesses did not come here due to the fact they didn't think they had an educated workforce to come to. So where are they going to get the workers from? Nothing has really changed with regards to literacy in the city of Detroit, adult or K through 12. I mean, there was a less than 1% increase, but that's still 66% lower than the state average. So you're bragging about something that is so minimum. How do you address and fix that problem?
I wish I had those answers, but I'm not running for mayor. So, that's their job to figure out. And we've heard a lot of platitudes. We've heard a lot of plans. I don't know. We've seen a lot of details, and I don't know how realistic their plans are. But the truth is, and it was said by Coleman Young decades ago, there are not a lot of problems in this city that won't be fixed with a good job. And if you're going to get a good job, you got to have a good education.
Right.
And when these employers come to town, one of the biggest things you hear them say is, we want to hire Detroiters. We don't have a lot of people who are qualified. If every mayor of Detroit who can put Detroiters to work will succeed. But people who tell us they're going to do things they can't do, all they will do is increase cynicism. And the more cynical people are, the less likely they are to participate in our system. And that's going to drive voter participation and turnout down. So my thought is, if you want to run this city, if you want to lead this city, make a couple realistic promises and follow through on them. And once you've shown us you can do that, we'll give you more work. We'll let you take on the bigger things and we'll support you. But I don't know.
You talk about what's realistic, and not to, just to play devil's advocate. If there is a lack of success within the first year, because the next person is going to have a very short lease. If they're not successful, or people do not see success within the first year, there will be talk about, drafting Mike Duggan for mayor again if he does not win the gubernatorial election. And, I'm just going to keep it real. There will also be those that will say, we give it back to the predominantly black community, and look what has happened. That's going to be a narrative. We know that. If people want to act like that's not going to be a narrative, they are naive. It's just how politics work. So with so many issues possible issues, let me put that in air quotes, with regards to bills being due, yes, there's a rainy day fund or a $500 million, but that money will be diminished as well. What is the plan that you've seen from any of the candidates? What is the plan to add to that fund or replenish that fund? Because I haven't heard anything.
So I haven't been following the issues as closely as some of our other reporters. I mean, as an investigative reporter, I'm looking at what the problems are more so than looking at the solutions. But I have heard Mary Sheffield suggest that she would impose a tax, or she would propose a tax.
The entertainment tax?
Yeah. So that put a surcharge on tickets to your shows, your concerts, your sporting events. Coleman Young had a ticket like that on tickets at Tiger Stadium because the city owned Tiger Stadium. And I think that's a realistic, and it's something, frankly, that's been overdue. But beyond that, I can't tell you. She's also talked about lowering property taxes, which would be a very expensive proposition. So I don't know if her new funds would just offset that. I'm not sure. Santil Jenkins, when she was running, I think discussed a city sales tax where we would tack a little extra charge onto things. If I recall correctly, Santil didn't make it out of the primary. So if I've got that wrong, it may just be because I wasn't paying as close attention.
No, she didn't make it. Yeah, she didn't make it. So the entertainment tax actually is a good idea for city residents because those that pay attention, the majority of those that go to Little Caesars Arena, Ford Field, Comerica Park, which will be getting a new name soon, a lot of those are non-Detroiters. So if they're willing to pay that, then so be it. But I think that on the surface, it is actually a good idea because the money will be coming from those visiting the city. And if they're willing to pay it, which they will, that's fine. But what's going to, if it gets shot down, because again, there may be 2 ethics investigations with her leading to the first of the year after she's sworn in. And if both of those investigations, even if one of those investigations comes out negative, that's just not going to be a good look for the city. I mean, it's not, no matter how you look at it. So moving forward, how do you get, and without a doubt, encouraging people to subscribe to the free press or the print media, $1 a month, that's one way for people to find out. But other than that, it's oblivious because, you do have the TikTokers and the local internet broadcasters. And oftentimes people see that as the gospel, and that's unfortunate because, I read a lot of what you write. Well, I've been following you for years. I read a lot of what, the Nolan Finleys and the Caitlin Busses of the world, what they write in their editorials. You have Nancy Caffro with the Free Press. She does a great job, but not everyone takes the time to read the paper. What is your suggestion to help moving forward? Because you have a gubernatorial election next year coming up. What do you suggest? We can suggest the $1 a month, but what do you suggest needs to be done for people to be informed and stay informed?
Sure. Well, you have to pay attention and you have to speak up. Now, I know that people can't go to city council meetings because they're during the day, but they do broadcast them and you can watch them after they happen. You can watch them as they happen and you can make comments. But more importantly, you can contact your elected officials. You can send them an email. You can call them. You can send them an old-fashioned letter. They pay attention to this because I think when they hear from constituents, they figure those constituents are like cockroaches. If you see one, there's 1,000 more out there. And unfortunately, I think some of our elected officials do think of us as cockroaches. They like to step on us rather than give us a nice place to live. But that's for another day. We'll talk about that. But you have to let them know that you're watching and that you demand that they follow through on their promises. When they have a public appearance, when they're in your neighborhood, when they're at your church, when they're at your neighborhood association meeting, go there and ask them hard questions. Let them know that you're paying attention. Because really, the thing that despots want is an uninformed populace. And if you let people know that you're paying attention, that you remember what they promised, and that you want a progress report, they will be a lot more careful, first of all, about what they promise, and second of all, about how hard they work to make those promises come true. But if you're just going to sit there and you're going to complain and you're not going to do anything about it and you're not going to vote, well, you're part of the problem too. So you got to decide.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Problem or part of the solution. Identifying problems is the easiest thing in the world. It's a dime a dozen. Coming up with solutions, that's a needle in a haystack. That's 1 in a million. Let's try and be needles instead of dozens.
It is interesting you bring that up, ML, because last August 30th, to be exact, after the M-STEP scores came out on August 28th of 2024, that was a Wednesday. I'm reading the scores. So between that Wednesday, I got an advanced copy of it. Let me be fully transparent. So I got an advanced copy of the results. But by Friday, on August 30th, 2024, I wrote an email to 106 stakeholders, the mayor's office, city council, county commissioners, both of the U.S. representatives that serve Detroit, both of the senators, the state director of education up in Lansing, those elected board of education members up in Lansing, 106 ML. I got a reply back from only 5 people. And my correspondence included some solutions. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of I'm not the biggest fan of Gretchen Whitmer, but I do applaud her for what she has done with MyLeap. So I use MyLeap as an example because everybody always wants to talk about, well, we don't control the school district. Well, the governor does not control the school district as far as the state of Michigan. She still created another level of bureaucracy that will enable people to have a sort of watchdog type of situation. And that's what I was suggesting in Detroit. So I have to give credit to the state board of education responded back as a group. So the elected members and this Mike Rice, who was the superintendent at the time, they responded back. Stabenow responded back. Peters responded back. Then Deputy Mayor of Detroit, Todd Bettison, responded back. And Dana Powell-Hinkie, who's my state senator in the district I live in, she was chairman of the education committee at the time. She responded back. Those are the 5 people out of 106 people that replied back. And again, you're right. They don't take it serious because I'm not a resident of Detroit. So a lot of the ones in Detroit probably was like, well, why should respond back to him? He don't live in Detroit. And that may have been their attitude. But that's where they miscalculate when it comes to not responding to people because nothing has been done. And it's still the same old sad story when you get the literacy scores or the proficiency scores for the city of Detroit, the bottom of the totem pole. No different than the 17 socioeconomic factors. Detroit at the bottom of the totem pole in all 17 of them. But they know the people don't care. Like you said, if they're not being a part of the solution, then they are the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get much simpler than that. If you're not willing to make an effort and leave all the work to somebody else, if they don't share your priorities, they're not going to do it. I mean, it's we got to get off our ass. That's what we got.
Yeah. And I want to thank you, ML, because I know we was planning this and you had your volleyball today and all that. But I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be a part of this podcast. I know you've been a part of the podcast on Saturday down in McShane's. So we appreciate you, and you always willing to come on Detroit in Black and White. And I've always appreciated and respected the work that you do, both you and your wife. So again, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. And there's a lot to think about. And unfortunately, low voter turnout tomorrow. The prediction of who's going to win is Mary Sheffield. But if she don't get things moving in the right direction based on her promises, it's going to be a short tenure for her. That's my opinion.
I think this next mayor is going to have less grace period than
I agree. Darren Nichols wrote an article about that.
Yeah. And Darren's one of our many people here at the Free Press who keep an eye on things. Longtime City Hall reporter, very smart reporter.
Right.
He brings a lot of perspective and a lot of insight. So definitely check out Darren. But I appreciate the opportunity to chop this up with you. If folks want to hear more of what we think about this, I got a podcast called ML's Soul of Detroit. We're up every Tuesday, and we not only talk about these issues, but we take you behind the scenes and let you know what's really going on in politics and government. So stay informed, stay engaged, and if you're mad, do something about it. Don't just tell somebody about it. Do something about it.
And when you get a chance, can you text me that podcast information, ML, and I will talk about it at 9 o'clock when I go live.
Sounds good. Yeah, just MLSoulofDetroit.com, and you can always find us on any of the podcasting platforms. But I'll send that to you as soon as we wrap up here.
All right, I appreciate you, ML. Tell your wife I say hello.
I sure will. Thanks, Eric. Take care.
Okay.
Keep up the great work.
Oh, thanks. And you do as well.
Okay.
All right. So that was the ML Elrick, reporter for the Detroit Free Press. I will be talking more about this at 9 o'clock when I go live. And I would thank everyone then at that time for joining me. And until 9 o'clock, hour and a half from now, peace.